Well, good morning and welcome everyone to Sierra Foothills Unitarian Universalists. My name is the Reverend A.J. Van Tyne. I'm the minister of this congregation, and I'm joined in this worship service for the fall equinox and Rosh Hashanah. I'm joined by Bill Boyce, our worship associate, as well as Patty Leftridge, our music director, and Adrian, our director of religious education, will be doing the story for all ages. And we have special music this week from Robert Ludgate and Jeff Chamberlain. And of course, those of us putting together the worship service are joined by all of you. Each one of you is welcome here today. And the beauty of languages and cultures and skin tones that come together in your uniqueness, you are welcome here. In all the ways that you experience and express gender, you are welcome here. In the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here. With all of the religious and ethical traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here. However you move about and interact with the world, you are welcome here. Whether you come this morning feeling hopeful, feeling despair, or anywhere in between, you are welcome here. No matter how long you've been away, nor how soon you may return, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today. I especially welcome any newcomers. Our Zoom worship is not so different from our regular services, although each Sunday is a little bit different here, so please come back a few times to really get to know us. And now I invite Bill to begin our worship by leading us in lighting our chalices.
Before we start this, we've done this before where we think about the directions north, south, east, west. If you know where north, south, east, and west is relative to your house, feel free to look at that. If not, just kind of think your mind towards it during this process, okay? So, in pagan and earth-centered traditions, sacred time and space is often established by calling the four directions. We light our chalice today by invoking these sacred natural energies. Spirit of the East, Spirit of air, inspiration, and new beginnings, be with us as we hail the new season. Spirit of the South, Spirit of fire, passion, and taking action, be with us as we renew our commitment to justice. Spirit of the West, Spirit of water, sunsets, endings, be with us as we let go of what no longer serves us. And Spirit of the North, Spirit of earth, of ancestors, of grounding, be with us as we gather in sacred community.
I now invite you to hymn 52, In the Sweet Fields of Autumn, our opening hymn. Suzanne, can you hear this? I don't think the audio is coming through.
The wild swan is calling, alas for the daisies, the tall fern and grasses, wind, sweep and rainfall, willowlands and grasses. The snows of December shall fill windy hollows.
morning and Happy New Year! But don't get out the fireworks just yet. This New Year is the Jewish New Year, one of several actually, and it has a different flavor and meaning than January 1st. This weekend, Jewish people all over the world are celebrating Rosh Hashanah, the New Year. So what is it? What year is it? Any guesses? Well, this year, the Jewish calendar says it is 5781, a little further ahead than 2020. 5781. Happy New Year, everyone! Just like the Gregorian calendar that we commonly use to identify days, months, and years, the Jewish calendar is full of history and different ways of counting. We're not going to get into all of that today, but we should mention that because the Jewish tradition is older than the Christian tradition, it makes sense that they counted a few more years than the Christians did. So on Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish tradition adds another year onto the calendar and celebrates the creation of the world. We usually don't think about that on January the 1st New Year's celebrations. So while we're inundated with pictures of people partying as the year changes, we should note that Rosh Hashanah is not like that. Instead, it marks the start of the high holy days. There is a worship service involved and special prayers. Rosh Hashanah is also called the Day of Judgment, which sounds pretty heavy. This is the time when it's said that the Lord inscribes the names of the righteous people in the book of the living and blots out the names of the wicked. Talk about a naughty and nice list. This is it. The rest of us who are not all good or hopelessly bad get about 10 days to put ourselves in order. This is a time for reflection. New Year's resolutions are definitely a good idea. A big wild New Year's party, on the other hand, would probably not be the best way to get in the spirit of Rosh Hashanah. Oh, and instead of those tooters, Jewish people use a ram's horn called a shofar to ring in the new year. The sound of the shofar blowing helps wake people up and remind them to start the year off right. Rosh Hashanah is a time to remember the gifts of our lives and creation as a whole. Traditionally, apples and honey are served as symbols of these delicious gifts. Challah bread is braided round to symbolize the turning of the year. Are you hungry yet? I love this everyday sort of symbolism. It's easy to do and still carries a lot of meaning. So Shana Tova, Happy New Year to our Jewish neighbors, our Jewish ancestors, and our Jewish UUs. It's time to get serious about life, to count our blessings, and make sure that we're being our best selves.
And so given that Friday was the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, I offer this call to gather for the high holy days from one of my colleagues, a Jewish Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend Leah Ongiri. This is the season of repair, a time to reflect on how we might endure when life tears at us. We are held by the great book of life, in which it is written that we will inevitably face deprivation and discomfort, longing and forgiveness. Each among us must contemplate our own place in it all. As those of us in relationship with Judaism mark the high holy days, our hearts fill with hope and fear, turning and settling, mystery and agency, accountability and acceptance. Let us gather today in somber celebration of our shared humanity and our personal power. Come, let us worship together.
When a Great Tree Falls by Maya Angelou. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder, lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly, our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory, suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws, unkind words, unsaid, promised walks, never taken. Great souls die, and our reality, bound to them, takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wizened. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses, restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed, they existed. We can be, and be better, for they existed.
In this community of mutual care, we celebrate the great joys of life together and help share the burden of sorrows and grief. And as such, each week we share specific joys and sorrows from the lives of our members and friends. If you have a joy or a sorrow anytime during the week, feel free to contact me, or if I'm out of the pulpit that week. Actually, this is old. If you have a joy or sorrow during the week, please email joysandsorrows@mysfuu.org, and that will let our pastoral care team and myself and our administrator know, and it will be included in the service. You can email what you would like included. And if you have any other joys or sorrows now that you have not emailed ahead of time, you may type them into the chat bar now for others to read. This week we have only one sorrow shared. It's from Dan Zarkowski. He shares that his longtime friend Rob passed away at the age of 62. Dan wishes that Rob had made better lifestyle choices and perhaps holding this sorrow and all of the joys and sorrows of the week, including those perhaps shared in the chat, those left unsaid, unexpressed, but still tenderly held within our hearts. I invite you now into a time of meditation, reflection, and prayer. Great mystery which grounds us and surrounds us. Divine presence known by many names and in so many ways. Mother Gaia, dear eternal one. A great tree has fallen, and we mourn the loss of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. In a year of already such loss, we are reminded both of the tenacity of those emboldened by conviction and tradition to hold on as long as possible. And also we are reminded of the inevitability of death, of loss, of steps backwards. We find ourselves in a period of transition, in an election year so critical for the soul of our nation, and at the point of a fall equinox and a new year in the Hebrew calendar, a turning of the seasons like any other, the day and the night of this equinox in cosmic balance, heeding nothing of the woes of our lives, carrying on in serene beauty. And as the high holy days of the Jewish tradition commence, we are reminded of the ending of a year and the birth of something new. It is a good thing to mark the days, to notice the passing of the seasons, to honor the completion of a new year, to pause and to ask, what must we do now? Where have we fallen short before, and what must we do now? Holy One, immanent presence beyond all description, may we find a balanced centeredness, a way of being which fully engages the world and all its enormous grief, all its imperfections and sore points, all the horrors we wish would just disappear. And in doing so, in honoring and experiencing our sorrow, our fear, our cries of hopelessness in the night, we may find our way forward. Justice Ginsburg is not the last nor the first to inspire us, nor the first nor last for us to lament her passing. May we hold her in memory as a whole imperfect person, not because she always did exactly the right thing, but because of what she inspires and the determination, the righteous dissent that she has appropriately come to represent. As our Jewish kin say upon the death of a beloved, may her memory be for a blessing. And as many have been saying in addition in this past few days, may her memory be for a revolution. Knowing that she is not the first, I invite you now to unmute or use the chat, or don't worry about any of that and simply speak into the space where you are, but speak into this prayer the names of others who have passed on, whether giants in the public sphere or giants on their impact on you personally in your life. And their memory, remembered in this prayer, will be for a blessing and for a revolution. Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Persia Woolley.
Carol Arve.
Joe Chandler.
Sue Dunbar.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Margaret Chapman.
Lisa Joseph Bach. Theo Douglas. Harry and Bertha Holt. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses, restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed. They existed. We can be and be better, for they existed. May it be so. Baruch Hashem. Blessed be. And amen. I invite you to continue in this spirit of reflection, meditation, and prayer as we hear hymn 73, Chant for the Seasons.
Eternal story, autumn is upon us. Summertime has turned the star wheel, autumn is upon us. Summertime has turned the star wheel, autumn is upon us.
Thank you, Patty. Now invite Bill to offer his reflection.
Good morning, everyone. Just one heads up, my connection's been a little unstable, but that's part of life, I guess. Anyway, so stop me if you've heard this before. Oh, wait, you can't. You're all muted. Anyway, a long, long time ago, there was this beautiful bird. It was so beautiful that the sun adopted it as its own bird and declared it would live forever. So it did, in the desert, all alone, and flew around singing and flying and looking all around awesome. But living forever and not getting old are two different things. So the bird asked the sun to make it young again, and after building a clearly combustible nest, this bird didn't like getting older, so it builds a nest, bursts into flames, and now it's fresh and shiny again. That, my friends, is what we call a myth. And in the case of this myth, clearly not based in reality. Rebirth part. Really, I'm supposed to believe a moral that tells me that if you ask hard enough and get all burned up, you come back stronger and prettier. Sorry, folks. Rebirth and renewal are not that easy. Destruction, that's easy. A pretty bird creates a combustible pile and it, well, combusts. That's easy. The binary-obsessed family lights off colored fireworks to announce a fetus's genitalia designation. A cat jumps on a half-done puzzle. A massive nuclear bomb is dropped on an unsuspecting city. This is destruction. And the aftermath from these destructions are not so easy to renew, rebuild, or be reborn from. Let's assume for a moment that renewal or rebirth comes from some level of destruction. To my mind, anything else would just be a renovation, a reconfiguring, or a revision. Renewal or rebirth comes from destruction or death, whether figuratively or literally. Now, if you can stretch your imagination with me for a moment and focus on any act of destruction you've witnessed in recent times, I am sure a few come to mind pretty quickly. Now, thinking about that destruction, do you recall at any time following that destruction, a pretty bird miraculously rising from the destruction and tweeting a pretty song? If so, let me know in the chat section, and I'll let AJ know you should be giving a reflection about that at some point. It sounds wonderful, and I want to know more. Look, I get it. Destruction, death, massive seismic change is awful, absolutely awful. But worse than the awfulness of the destruction itself is some myth that lets us believe that from the ashes something will grow, automatically, just cause. Let's keep it simple. Remember I mentioned that cat that knocked over your puzzle? I certainly do. Well, there you sat, head in hands, tears rolling down your face, heaving in agony at the lost time and effort when you were so close to completing the left tusk of that elephant. So close. But then you recovered. And what did you do? You had three basic choices, all included still loving your cat, let's be honest. One, leave the pieces on the floor as a reminder of your folly to even try to create. Two, put away the puzzle so as to never remember this dark time. Or three, pick up the pieces and finish the puzzle. That's it. That's the simple message. From destruction can come renewal or rebirth. From destruction can come something beautiful. From destruction can come something good or better. But it doesn't always. For even a chance of something good or bad to come from something destroyed, it takes bacteria, psyllium, rain, bugs, birds, animals, sun, wind, carbon, dirt, worms, and time. Lots and lots of time. None of that is without effort. Return to the destruction I asked you to think about a moment ago. When the destruction is done destroying, what's the next step for you? When the rubble is lining the street, when the masks are freely burned in effigy by all, when the polls are closed, we cannot assume that good will always follow destruction. We cannot assume that renewal will even occur after destruction. We can only take whatever steps we think are best to clear the rubble and rebuild something we think might be better. All the while, someone else is probably clearing the same rubble to rebuild something they think might be better. And hopefully, community, friends, family, strangers will build something better. Will you leave the puzzle pieces on the ground? Will you pick them up and box them? Or will you work to finish that puzzle, then move on to the next one? Generosity is a spiritual practice of this congregation. When we offer our time, our talents, and our treasure, we deepen our engagement and become part of building the beloved community together. As part of our ethic of generosity, we also split our collection plate with a local community organization aligned with our values. This month, the Share the Plate recipient is Stand Up Placer, an organization whose mission is to save lives by empowering survivors and educating community. You can follow the link in the chat or to our website, mysfuu.org, and click Give to SFUU. Here you can donate to SFUU at any time for our Share the Plate program or directly to SFUU to pay your pledge. You can also download the app, Give Plus Mobile, where all you have to do is create an account, put in your zip code, and select SFUU to give. Instructions and links are at the bottom of the Give page at mysfuu.org. And as always, you can actually mail donations and pledges directly to the church at our address at 190 Finley Street. If this is your first time visiting us, that includes you, Mom, I know you're out there, please know that you are our guest and there is no expectation that you contribute. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Hello, friends and family at SFUU. I'm going to be playing a song this afternoon in honor of the imminent arrival of fall and also in memory of my sweetheart, Sue Dunbar. The song is called Autumn Blooms.
so much, Robert, for that beautiful music. Autumn certainly can be a time of melancholy, a time appropriate for remembrances and for the ending of things, the passing of lives into the mystery of missing those who have gone before. And as it turns out, Justice Ginsburg's death, while not a convenient time to leave a vacancy on the highest court, given all that is at stake, it turns out to have been an auspicious time for her passing. Ruth Bader Ginsburg died on Friday night, the very time when Rosh Hashanah begins. And in the Jewish tradition, when a person dies on Rosh Hashanah, it is a sign that they are a tzaddik, a person of great righteousness. The logic here, explained by NPR's Nina Totenberg, is that God has held back this person's death until the very last moment, because they were needed most and were most righteous. Now, to avoid valorizing and hero worshiping a single individual too much, I do want to take a moment to observe and parse out that there are, I think, two distinct griefs at play here. Certainly, Ginsburg was a trailblazer and a critical justice on the court for decades, and she would be mourned any time that she would pass away. But there is a second grief of what this means for our government and our democracy, namely that Mitch McConnell and Trump have another opportunity to place a young, regressive justice on the court, impacting our nation for a generation at least. Now, of course, this is a sermon. This is not political analysis, but I just want to recognize that this double grief and warn against falling into the emotionally valid, but not necessarily factually accurate mythos that Justice Ginsburg was a last bastion holding back a tide of hatred and oppression. This turn of events does make things more difficult, dangerous even for many people. But the court was already 5-4 in favor of the conservative, and the remedy remains the same, taking back the White House and the Senate. And who knows, with a 6-3 court, Biden may try to pack the court. There are all sorts of options, but I digress. I will return to my appropriate lane of sermonizing. And in doing so, I want to share these words from Reverend Leah Ongiri, who wrote the call to worship this morning. She was quoted recently in an email from the UU The Vote campaign, getting out the vote with UU's campaign. She said, "The grief of loss and the work to create something new, whether it be a more harmonious world or simply a reconstituted life without a loved one. This is part and parcel of co-creating the whole world with God. And what better time to be reminded of this, or maybe called for the first time to this work, than the birthday of the world." Co-creating the world with God. This is our charge, no more and no less. And I invite you to really consider this concept. Translate it however you need to, however you understand the ultimate, the sacred, the divine, the larger than you. Whether it is the progress of the human endeavor informed by science, whether it's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Sarah, whether it's the elements of nature in the 4 directions, or the immanent Buddha nature inherent in all things, or some other articulation, we cannot rely on any of these things to save us without any effort on our own part. Unitarian Universalists do have a great diversity of beliefs, but there isn't a ton of room for a laissez-faire theology of social action and social change. One of the 5 smooth stones of liberal religion, as articulated by UU theologian James Luther Adams, is the denial of the Immaculate Conception of virtue and the affirmation of the necessity of social incarnation. Or, in plain English, what Bill said: good things don't happen without effort. Renewal does not come after loss and destruction without social incarnation, without humans coming together and making something happen, making some change. And so it is our duty, our charge, our responsibility, and our privilege to co-create the world that we dream about, alongside and in collaboration with the divine, the sacred, the ultimate, the greater than I. With other humans, at the very least, we must co-create, other humans who are in the very same struggle with us. We are neither capable of making progress entirely on our own, nor are we excused from working for a better world. As the Talmud says, you are not obligated to complete the work, neither are you free to abandon it. So while we're talking about creation, or more accurately, co-creation, I also want to take the opportunity to clear up two beliefs about creation, which I believe are errors. One is about time, and the other is about suffering or destruction. I'll take the harder one first, which is really about the kind of renewal that we experience in autumn, the renewal of things passing away, of loss, of grief. Things must pass away, leaves must fall from the tree, fires must happen in the forest to clear room for new growth. Now, the error that I think our assumed and inherited culture makes, informed by centuries of Christian theology, is creation ex nihilo, creation out of nothing. Now, if we're just talking about the original myth of God creating reality or the universe from nothing, I'm not concerned with that. There's no way of knowing what was before the Big Bang, or if there was, we wouldn't know what was before that. I don't think it's a huge theological error for a theist to believe that God created everything before there was anything out of nothing. That is not what I'm concerned about when I want to criticize creation ex nihilo. But I do think that the logic of creation ex nihilo applied to other contexts besides, where does everything come from in the first place, there can be mistakes when we apply it to the world of history, of humans, of social change, of economics. It's this logic of creation of ex nihilo is part of what leads to narratives of ceaseless expansion, growing markets, with no room for the balance that is required by, say, the laws of physics and nature. There is no creation that we can actually achieve without some kind of material, some kind of fuel, and sometimes some kind of destruction to make space for the new. It's the circle of life. Creation is not making something out of nothing. It's refashioning something new from something pre-existing. One of my favorite metaphors for this is actually another fire myth, along with next to the phoenix myth. In Hawaiian religion, the goddess Pele is a volcano goddess of great destruction. But the destruction that she wreaks, of course, is the self-same process of creation that makes the islands possible in the first place. Volcano eruptions and pyroclastic flows create the very land, give it its fertile soil. Pele, the divine, is both destructor and creator. Now, I don't describe to a theology that creation requires destruction, but I do believe that any act of destruction, any loss or death, brings about the potential, creates the conditions where there's potential for new creation, renewal, growth, and change. As Reverend Ongiri said, the grief of loss is part and parcel to co-creation with God as we work to create something new. Now, for the other error, this one is about time. Unlike the teachings of the dominant form of Christianity in Eurocentric civilization for the past 1,000 years, history is not a linear march of progress from point A to point B, from the beginning of time towards an eschaton, a final moment, culminating climax of history. At least I do not believe that. I personally am much more persuaded by the cycles and rhythms of seasons and nature and time that are taught by, or perhaps more accurately, observed by Earth-centered traditions. The idea of history, of time, of all reality being cyclical, being a never-ending process of creation, destruction, and renewal, of give and take. This is found across the globe in indigenous religious traditions. We can apply this to different stories of history, different ways of framing the events of the past and the future. Even that framing is embedded. You can see the past and the future is embedded in that inherited concept of linear time that we have. But take, for example, the history of the American project, just as a completely random example, no other reason to bring that one up. Or rather, the narratives that various groups have about the American project. So on the one hand, I reject the conservative claim that the founding fathers basically got it all right, and they've been fighting to preserve the perfect government ever since. I also reject the progressive claim that the founding fathers were on basically the right track, but there were some major errors, and we just need to sort of continually improve, and we'll make edits, and we'll make things better, and we'll just always be moving onward and upwards, and everything's fine because it's always getting better, regardless of how much suffering marginalized people may be experiencing. Side note. Rather than those two approaches to looking at the passage of time, on a day like today, or in this time of equinox, on a day of balance in the Earth's celestial path around the sun, I am reminded that all is ebb and flow, destruction and recreation. And through that lens, I see the American project as one of multiple beginnings, endings, and renewals constantly overlapping each other. There's the Revolution, but then the Civil War, Reconstruction, and Jim Crow. The Great Depression and the New Deal, the Civil Rights era, the Black Lives Matter era, the current crisis of proto-fascism in the White House. Looking at it this way, I can't help but feel not that we are marching onward, upwards, and forever always, but we are coming towards another solstice in the rhythm of the life of our nation, a time when the pattern will swing from one direction to another. We may not notice that exact moment, and in truth, the movement of progress and repair in the world of politics and government and history is so much less steady and predictable and assured than the almost choreographed movements of the stars in the heavens and our blue-green earth among them. Renewal in the political, in the lived experience of human civilization, is not guaranteed. That solstice is not an inevitability of the laws of physics. Renewal is not without effort. The saying goes that it is just darkest before the dawn, however. But maybe that's just because things just keep getting darker and darker and more difficult right up until the point that they don't. And then there is some hope and some light and some breaking dawn. Now, I wish I could promise you a new dawn, and I wish I could promise that it was coming soon. And I cannot. But I can promise you the truth, that capital T truth, that every death, every loss, every act of destruction breaks us open and creates the space for possibility and change. If we take up and answer the call. If we respond, we can move even more, we can make even more possibilities arise from a tragedy. It is up to us to co-create the world that we seek, the world that demands, the world that justice demands be brought to life. And so I offer you this charge, this invitation in this moment of setback and legitimate anxiety. My invitation to you is to double down on your commitments to co-create with whatever it is that you consider sacred. Now, I mean literally double your efforts if you can. So, because remember, this is an invitation. This is a spiritual practice that I am encouraging you to take, offering it as a possibility. This is not a demand that you should do this or feel guilty about or feel bad if this is not something that you can do right now. And this can be a spiritual practice that maybe you don't employ this week or this time, but you could deploy in other setbacks in the future, not just the ones that we've experienced this week. When hope seems to be taken even further from you, the practice is to literally double your efforts to work for justice and to work for democracy, a healthy democracy. So I mean this very cut and dry, almost boring. If you have been giving money to campaigns or to get out the vote organizations, to the League of Women Voters, to whatever kind of organization out there is promoting good values and is part of the work of co-creating a just democracy together, if you've been giving X amount of money to them, double that. Harness your grief and fear and conviction and double the dollars that you give. If you give of your time, if you phone bank or text bank for 1 hour a week or 30 minutes a week or 10 minutes a week, double that amount. If you haven't been doing any of these things, consider beginning or finding a way that you can give your effort and take your action to help co-create the world. If you need to make room for these new or redoubled efforts, do so. Let fall away what no longer serves you. Whatever is not life-giving, do some clearing, some cleaning, some reevaluating, some renewal. What better time than the birthday of the world and the turning of the wheel to recommit to co-creating a just society together. I invite you now to our closing hymn offered by our own Jeff Chamberlain, Ride the Wheel. Thank you, Jeff. As we call the directions to establish sacred space and time, so must we release them as we come to the end. In benediction, I invite you again to face or to focus on each direction in turn as we release them. Hail and farewell, Spirit of East, Spirit of Air. May your blessings of inspiration be with us always. Hail and farewell, Spirit of South, Spirit of Fire. May your blessings of passion be with us always. Hail and farewell, Spirit of West, Spirit of Water. May your blessings of surrender be with us always. Hail and farewell, Spirit of North, Spirit of Earth. May May your blessings of grounding be with us always. Hail and farewell. Please join me in our words to extinguish our chalices. As we go forth, may we carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Blessed be.